Hello everypony, I'm Fauna Joy, and welcome to the first episode of my new series, Reviewer Hat. In this show, I'm going to be taking a look at each episode of Friendship is Magic in sequence, critiquing the episode as well as commenting on some of the changes Hasbro has made since the episode aired. It's definitely going to take a long while for me to catch up to the current seasons, but it won't happen until we start, so shall we? The very first episode opens with a gorgeous storybook animation telling the story of two princesses who ruled over Equestria, and the sad tale of one having to banish the other with the elements of harmony. In comes Twilight Sparkle, the primary focus of the show, so the writers want you to believe. She recognizes the elements of harmony and brushes off her friends on their way to a party to go find information about the elements.
Does that pony do anything except study?
I think she's more interested in books than friends.
Twilight looks up the elements of harmony and is referenced to another story about the mare in the moon, which her assistant Spike off-hoofedly mentions is an old pony's tale. The legend says that the mare in the moon was an evil mare who was imprisoned in the moon and would escape on the night of the longest day of the 1000th year of her imprisonment, the stars aiding in her escape. Twilight has Spike send a letter to the princess telling her about her suspicions that the prophecy in the books is going to come true during the Summer Sun celebration in a few days, as it's the 1000th celebration.
Isn't that good? No! No! It's bad!
Speaking of Spike, he's a bit different in this first episode than he is in the rest of the show. When Twilight tries to dictate her letter to him, he has difficulty with the larger words she uses, and she has to simplify for him. I'm incredibly grateful they didn't keep this aspect of his character past the first two-parter. It would have become irritating very quickly. Even so, it really doesn't make sense to have that aspect in there at all. Spike is Twilight's assistant. That's made clear right off the bat. If she regularly dictates letters to him, wouldn't he have a vocabulary equal to hers? Spike, burps up a response from the princess that says Twilight should stop reading her dusty books and make some friends. It also says she should go to the location set aside for the celebration this year and oversee preparations. Wait, look at the design of this chariot. There's no back to it. Isn't that kind of dangerous? What happens if the Pegasi carrying it have to dodge something? Or there's inclement weather they weren't warned about by the locals? Or, heck, what about takeoff? What's to stop a clumsy pony from just falling off backwards? It seems to me this thing was really poorly designed. There's one other thing I have to ask. This is the 1000th Summer Sun celebration. Even if it's tradition to hold the celebration in a different city each year, why wouldn't they hold the Millennial celebration in Canterlot? 1000 years is a heck of a landmark for anything. You'd think it'd be held in the capital of the kingdom, and not some out-of-the-way little town that doesn't have much influence on the country as far as we can tell. To try and cheer Twilight up, Spike mentions that the princess arranged for Twilight to stay in a library, and it works, making her decide that she's gonna get her official duties over with and then head to the library to keep researching the mare in the moon. When they land, Spike encourages her to try talking to one of the locals, a pink pony with a curly pink mane and 3 balloons for a cutie mark. Twilight says hello, and the other just gasps and dashes off.
Goodness me. What would you term what just happened there?
I'll say this now just to warn you all. I really, really do not like the early season's Pinkie Pie. I can't quite pinpoint the time in the show where my opinion of her starts to change, just that it's sometime around the 3rd season. Up until then, I find her entirely unlikable. Yeah, she has a couple funny moments here and there, but in the early episodes, she's rude, almost entirely inconsiderate of others' feelings, and on more than one occasion is either the direct cause of a problem, or at the very least makes a situation a lot worse. The Looney Turtle theorizes that she behaves this way because she can't read other ponies' emotions, but I don't buy it. She admits more than once that she knows what she's done is wrong and even looks contrite, but she doesn't change her behavior, at least not until somewhere around season 3. Since then, she's focused much more on others' feelings, how what she's doing affects them, and is careful not to do anything that's insensitive. I do enjoy her now, but be warned, you'll hear a lot of exasperation over her antics from me in the beginning. Okay, tirade over. The first official thing on Twilight's checklist is to check on the food over at the local apple farm. There she meets an orange pony named Applejack, who is certainly quite friendly.
Good afternoon. My name is Twilight Sparkle. Well, how'd it do, Miss Twilight? A pleasure making your acquaintance. I'm Applejack. We here at Sweet Apple Acres sure do like making new friends. Friends? Actually, So, what can I do you for?
When Twilight agrees to stay and try the food, Applejack introduces her to every single member of her family present, including Big Macintosh, Apple Bloom, and Granny Smith. They then use Apple Bloom's adorableness to keep her there for lunch instead of just a taste test.
Aren't you gonna stay for brunch?
Whoa, man! You're working your cuteness on me, man! Your irresistible cuteness! Stop it! Wrong, wrong!
This is a great way to introduce Applejack. They start off showing what a hard worker she is, as well as establishing just how a fruit tree farm operates in a pony-dominated world. It also makes a big point of introducing the rest of her immediate family, who will be accompanying her through the rest of the show. I did find it a bit odd, though, that they decided to keep the ponies on the farm to just these 4. It wouldn't have been hard to keep the rest of the family around and just showcase the important ones. That's what background characters are for, after all. But if there was some reason behind the scenes that limited the number of characters they were able to keep on the farm, I'm a little confused as to why it was later explained as the others being in town for a family reunion and not the Summer Sun celebration that Sweet Apple Acres was catering for. After all, this is a huge celebration that ponies are coming from all over the country for. It would make sense for the Apple family and others to come together and help get things ready. Well, either way, the never-ending list of family members made for a very amusing intro for AJ, and a good kickoff to intros for the main characters as Twilight and Spike meet them. Speaking of which, next on the list is the weather, which is supposed to be taken care of by a Pegasus named Rainbow Dash, who rather enthusiastically bowls them over, knocking Twilight into a mud puddle. Rainbow tries to help out by washing and drying her, but her enthusiasm leaves Twilight a little disheveled.
No, don't thank me. You're quite welcome.
Twilight has Rainbow pegged in an instant as she starts bragging about how she's going to show off for the Wonderbolts at the celebration, and eggs Rainbow on, saying they'd never take a Pegasus who couldn't even clear the sky of clouds. I love this exchange. It establishes Rainbow's personality right from the start, as well as Twilight's ongoing relationship with her. The two end up with a mutual respect, but that doesn't stop them from butting heads every now and then. This is why Rainbow is my favorite pony. She's confident in her abilities and a bit headstrong, but at the end of the day, she just loves hanging out with others. And when the show starts centering episodes around her, we learn that she's not afraid to admit when she's made mistakes, and on top of that, isn't afraid to make up for said mistakes. She's the kind of character that I admire and would really like to be.
That's kind of sappy.
Oh, what? That's how I feel!
No, I mean...
Oh, yeah.
On to the decorations, where we meet a white unicorn named Rarity. Spike is instantly smitten. As she turns around, Rarity's reaction to Twilight's messy mane is wonderful, and it gives a good idea of just what kind of acting to expect from Tabitha St. Germain as the show goes on. Rarity kidnaps Twilight and takes her to her boutique, fixing her mane and trying her in several outfits. It takes one mention of Canterlot for Rarity to decide that they should be besties. This doesn't really give Rarity much of an intro, but that's alright. She definitely starts shining later in the series.
What are you doing?
Why, I'm creating a gown, darling.
For what? Oh no, I'm stress sewing.
Next, it's music. They hear a chorus of birds singing beautifully and see a yellow Pegasus conducting them. Twilight tries to introduce herself, but the other is so shy she can barely speak. It isn't until the Pegasus sees Spike that she's even audible. Her name is Fluttershy, and thanks to Spike, she follows Twilight all the way into town and to the door of the library. This was a lovely little introduction for Fluttershy's character. It shows who she is, what she's like, and her passions without really saying or doing all that much. Exactly what Fluttershy's intro should be.
Perfect! Oh, I mean, yay.
Twilight quickly makes an exit, or rather entrance, into the library hoping for some quiet, but gets exactly the opposite when Pinkie Pie and the others shout, "Surprise!" Turns out it's a surprise welcome party that apparently goes on all night. This is Pinkie Pie's proper introduction, and it's quite memorable. It establishes her love of parties, her desire to make others happy, and it definitely establishes her energetic personality as well as her quirkiness as she eats a hot sauce-covered cupcake.
Spicy.
Twilight hides away in her room, hoping that the story of the Mare and the Moon really is just an old pony's tale. Finally, it's time for the celebration itself. Twilight looks up at the moon and watches as 4 stars disappear into it, the image of a pony disappearing from the surface. As Princess Celestia is supposed to arrive, instead a purple cloud of magic appears and reveals a dark alicorn mare.
Nightmare Moon.
She starts monologuing and, wait! That's the CMC altogether! I thought they'd never seen each other before the call of the cutie. You'd think they'd remember cowering with each other under a table during the return of the Boogeymare. Continuity, people, come on!
Quiet, you!
Rainbow is ready to fight this sinister figure bare-hooved, but is held back by Applejack. The pony asks if anyone knows who she is. When no pony answers, Twilight announces who she is. Nightmare Moon, a name the rest of the crowd recognizes. Nightmare Moon announces with maniacal laughter that the night will last forever! And we get the end of the first part. All in all, I really like this opener. It quickly and solidly establishes the world of Equestria, the villain that's going to be coming in, and who the main characters are going to be for the show. It even manages to establish Princess Celestia's character rather well without her actually appearing on screen. The cliffhanger is really well done too. It builds tension for the viewers and demonstrates just how powerful Nightmare Moon is, leaving us wondering what's going to happen. I know I was immensely curious to see the next part when I first watched. With that thought in mind, I'm Fauna Joy, clinging eagerly to this hat until the cliffhanger's resolved. Twilight looks up the elements. Really, Max? Barking dogs, so much help. Speaking of Spike, he's a bit different in this first episode than he is in the rest of the show. When Twilight tries to dictate her letter to him, he has difficulty, not she. When they land, Spike encourages her to try talking to one of the locals. I screwed that up, including Big Macintosh, Apple Bloom, and Granny Smith. They then use blah. It would make sense for the Apple family and others to come together to get things ready. They then use Apple Bloom's adorableness to keep her there for lunch instead of just a taste test. And there's an ice cream truck outside. I hope it doesn't come through. Shut up, computer. It also makes a big point of introducing the rest of her family, who will be accompanying her. That's a hard word. I'm a little confused as to why it was explained as them being in town for a family reunion and not the Summer Sun celebration that the Sweet Apple Acres was catering for. It's Sweet Apple Acres, not the Sweet Apple Acres. I'm a little confused as to why it was explained as them being in town for a family reunion and not the Summer Sun celebration that Sweet Apple Acres was catering for, and there's the damn ice cream truck again. After all, this is a huge celebration that the ponies are coming from all over the country. I just keep stumbling. I'm a little confused as to why it was explained later as the others being in town for a family reunion. Oh, for goodness sake. It would make sense for the Apple family and others to come together to help get things ready. Well, something in my throat. Well, either way, the never-ending list of family members made for a very amusing intro for AJ and a good kickoff to intros for our other main characters as Twilight and Spike and shoot. And a good kickoff for intros for our main 6. I was so close. The two end up with a mutual respect, but that doesn't stop them from butting heads every now and then. This is why I'm phooey. Rainbow tries to help out by washing and drying her, but her enthusiasm and eggs Rainbow on, saying that she'd never take and on top of it, she's not afraid to, darn it. On to the decorations, where we meet a unicorn named Rarity, with whom Smike is bitten. It shows who she is, what she's like, and her passions without really saying or doing anything all that much, and that was not in the script. Twilight tries to introduce herself, but the other is so shy she can barely speak. This was a lovely little introduction for Fluttershoot. I bet that's a thing someone's drawn. As Princess Celestia is supposed to arrive, instead a dark cloud of magic appears and reveres. You'd think they'd remember cowering with each other under a cane. I thought they'd never seen each other before the call of the cutie. You'd think they'd remember cowering, not covering.